They say beauty is a gift, a blessing bestowed upon a fortunate few. But for Steamy, it became a curse, a twisted reason for her own mother's desperate act. Before the sun could even paint the sky with its morning hues, Mamai, Steamy's mother, sought the dark arts of a native doctor. What could possibly drive a mother to sacrifice her own daughter's beauty, to weave her precious hair into a sinister charm? This is the tragic tale of how envy, twisted love, and ancient traditions hardened a mother's heart, turning it to cold, unyielding stone. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to hear more stories like this one. In the quiet heart of a Guta village, nestled amongst rolling hills and whispering trees, there lived a young woman named Steamy. Her beauty was the stuff of legends, a vibrant masterpiece that drew eyes from miles around. Men traveled from distant lands, braving treacherous paths, just to steal a glimpse of her radiant face. When she graced the marketplace with her presence, music, men would forget their wives' names in their awe. Goats, usually preoccupied with their endless chewing, would pause, their eyes following her every move. Women would turn, their voices hushed with a mixture of admiration and envy, whispering, "That is Steamy, the most beautiful girl in the village." Her name a reverent murmur on their lips. But beauty, they say, is a double-edged sword, a dangerous gift that can bring as much sorrow as it does joy. And for Steamy, her own home, once a sanctuary, slowly transformed into a place of silent tears and unspoken fears. Steamy lived a simple life with her mother, Mamai, a woman etched with the lines of hardship and worry, and her elder sister, Ada, a kind soul burdened by her lack of outward beauty. Their father, a strong and loving man, had passed away long ago, succumbing to a swift and merciless illness, leaving Mamai to navigate the treacherous currents of life and raise her two daughters alone. Ada, at 26, was a woman of unwavering diligence, her hands calloused from tireless work, but her appearance was, by the village's harsh standards, plain. No man had ever darkened their doorstep, seeking her hand in marriage, a harsh reality that cast a shadow over her life. Steamy, on the other hand, was a mere 19, yet suitors flocked to her like moths to a flame, each vying for her attention, their hearts aflame with desire. Mamai loved both her daughters, her heart torn between a mother's affection and the weight of tradition. Deep down, she harbored a growing worry that Ada would be condemned to a life of shame, an outcast forever overshadowed by her younger sister's dazzling beauty if Steamy were to marry first. In Aguta, it was an unbreakable taboo, a violation of the natural order, for a younger daughter to wed before her elder sister. The whispers would become a chorus of judgment, the villagers' voices laced with scorn. Didn't her mother teach her respect? Has the family lost all sense of tradition? And Mamai feared that shame, that crushing weight of public condemnation, more than anything else in the world. One bright afternoon, as the sun beat down on Agita's bustling market square, a handsome man arrived, his presence commanding attention. His name was Ego, a wealthy trader from a neighboring village, renowned for his sharp wit and even sharper business acumen. He dealt in cows, shimmering gold, and the finest fabrics, treasures that drew merchants and customers alike. And whenever he graced the market with his presence, everyone would rush to serve him, eager to earn his favor and a share of his wealth. But that day, amidst the bartering and the clamor, he saw something that made him forget all about business. He saw Steamy. Her laughter, light and airy, sounded like the chime of distant bells, a melody that resonated deep within his soul. Her long, flowing hair, the color of midnight touched by moonlight, danced in the wind like a living thing, a mesmerizing spectacle that held him captive. Ego's mouth went dry, his tongue suddenly heavy in his throat. He turned to an old woman beside him, her face etched with the wisdom of years. "Who is that?" he managed to croak, his voice barely a whisper. The woman chuckled, a knowing glint in her eyes. "That is Steamy, daughter of Mama Steamy, the jewel of this village," she replied, her voice filled with pride. From that day forward, Ego abandoned his other markets, his business ventures taking a backseat to his newfound obsession. Every week, He returned to Aguta, drawn by an irresistible force, solely to catch a glimpse of Nimi. He would buy all of Mamai's yams, even when his storage was overflowing, creating a flimsy excuse to speak to her, to bask in her radiant presence. Before long, Nimi's heart, which had known little joy in recent times, started beating faster each time she saw him, a flutter of anticipation and hope stirring within her. And one magical evening, beneath the sprawling branches of the ancient mango tree, its leaves whispering secrets to the wind, Ego gently took her hand, his eyes filled with an unspoken love, and said softly, "Nimi, you are the woman I have been searching for my entire life. I want you to be my wife." Nimi smiled shyly, her cheeks flushed with a rosy hue, and nodded, unable to speak, overwhelmed by the intensity of her emotions. Her heart danced with uncontainable joy, a symphony of hope and longing filling her chest. But she knew one thing, a harsh truth that tempered her happiness. She couldn't simply say yes, surrendering to her desires. She needed her mother's blessing, her approval the key to unlocking her future. That same evening, Nimi ran home, her heart overflowing with excitement, each step lighter than the last. "Mama!" she shouted, bursting through the door, her voice filled with breathless anticipation. "There's something I want to tell you." Her mother, sitting by the fire, looked up and smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "You look happy, my daughter. What is it?" Nimi knelt before her mother, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, and said, "Mama, a man has asked for my hand in marriage. His name is Ego, a trader from the next village." Mamai's smile slowly faded, the warmth in her eyes replaced by a flicker of unease. "Ego, the rich man that sells gold?" she asked, her voice tinged with a note of caution. "Yes, Mama," Nimi replied, her voice filled with conviction. "He truly loves me." Mamai looked down for a long moment, her face unreadable, then said quietly, "My daughter, your sister Ada, is still here unmarried. In our tradition, the elder must marry before the younger. It is the way of things." Nimi froze, the joy that had filled her moments before now turning to ice in her veins. "But Mama, he loves me, not Ada," she pleaded, her voice trembling with desperation. "Not Ada." Her mother's voice became firm, unwavering, a wall of opposition crashing down on her dreams. "It cannot happen. It is an abomination, a violation of everything we believe in." That night, Nimi couldn't sleep, the weight of her mother's words crushing her spirit. Tears streamed down her cheeks, soaking her pillow, each drop a testament to her shattered hopes and a future that seemed to be slipping away. When Ego heard what had happened, the obstacle that stood between him and his beloved, he came to their house early the next morning, his determination burning bright. He greeted Mamai respectfully, bowing his head in deference, and said, "Mama, please, I have come to ask for Nimi's hand in marriage. I know your traditions and I respect them, but I am ready to wait, to prove my devotion. I am even willing to help Ada find a husband if that will ease your concerns and make you agree." Mamai replied sharply, her voice laced with resentment. "If you truly want to be a part of this family, if you truly respect our ways, then marry Ada. She is the elder, the one who deserves to be married first." But Ego shook his head, his eyes filled with a resolute sadness. "Forgive me, Mama," he said, his voice unwavering. "My heart belongs to Nimi. I cannot lie to myself, to you, or to Ada. I cannot force myself to love someone I do not." He turned and left, his heart heavy with disappointment and a growing sense of dread. And from that day, Nimi's world, once filled with promise, began to crumble around her. Days passed, each one longer and more agonizing than the last, and Nimi became withdrawn and weak, her vibrant spirit slowly fading. She barely spoke, her laughter, once a constant melody, vanished, replaced by a haunting silence. Ada noticed that her mother, too, became increasingly restless, her eyes haunted by an unspoken torment. At night, Mamai would sit outside, staring at the moon for hours on end, her lips moving in silent conversations with the shadows. One night, consumed by her fears and her unwavering adherence to tradition, she whispered to herself, "If I allow this, people will mock me. They will say my younger daughter has usurped the place of the elder. Never. Cannot allow it." And with that, she made a wicked decision, a choice that would forever alter the course of their lives. The next morning, before anyone else in the village had stirred from their slumber, Mamai tied her wrapper tightly around her waist, her face set with grim determination, and told her daughters that she was going to the next village to buy palm oil, a common errand that wouldn't raise suspicion. But that was a lie, a carefully constructed facade to conceal her true, horrifying intentions. She was going to see Baba Odumu, the most feared and revered native doctor in all the nearby villages, a man rumored to possess powers that could bend the will of both humans and spirits. The path to Baba Odumu's shrine was dark and silent, shrouded in an unsettling atmosphere that sent shivers down the spine. The air hung heavy with the smells of smoke, decaying leaves, and dried herbs, a pungent concoction that spoke of ancient rituals and forgotten magic. Cowries and skulls, remnants of past ceremonies, hung from the branches of gnarled trees, their hollow eyes seeming to watch her every step as Mamai approached the ominous hut. Baba Odumu sat on a stool, his body covered in white powder, his face a mask of ancient wisdom and unsettling power. He lifted his staff, carved with symbols that seemed to writhe and twist before her eyes, and said in a voice that resonated with the force of nature, "Who dares to enter the house of Odumu?" Mamai knelt quickly, her head bowed in supplication. "It is me, Baba. I need your help. A man loves my younger daughter, but tradition dictates that her elder sister must marry first. I want him to stop loving her, to turn his affections towards Ada instead." Baba Odumu's eyes shone with an unnatural light, a flicker of something dark and knowing. "Ah, you wish to bend the heart of love, to manipulate the very essence of desire. That is no small matter, woman. The spirits do not take kindly to such interference." He rose from his stool and went inside his hut, disappearing into the shadows. He emerged moments later, holding a small, intricately decorated clay pot, its surface covered in symbols that seemed to pulse with an inner energy. He handed it to her, his eyes never leaving hers. "Take this," he said, his voice low and grave. "Cut a little piece of your younger daughter's hair, a strand imbued with her very essence, and put it inside this pot. Then go deep into the forest, far from where people walk, to a place untouched by prying eyes. Hang the pot on a tall tree, its branches reaching towards the heavens, and leave it there for 14 years. If anyone sees the pot before those 14 years have passed, the child will die, and something terrible, something far worse than you can imagine, may happen to you." Mamai nodded quickly, her face pale with fear and a growing sense of dread. "I understand, Baba," she whispered, her voice barely audible. He warned her again, his voice a low, menacing rumble. "Do not tell anyone, woman. Not a soul must know of this. Not even the wind must hear it. The spirits are fickle and vengeful. Keep this secret locked within your heart, or face the consequences." She thanked him, her voice trembling, and gave him a pouch filled with money, the price for her desperate act, and hurried home, her heart pounding in her chest. That night, when everyone was asleep, the village bathed in the soft glow of the moonlight, Mamai tiptoed into Nimi's room, her movements as silent as a shadow. The moonlight touched Nimi's sleeping face, highlighting her delicate features and making her look even more beautiful, an innocent victim of her mother's twisted desires. Her mother's hands trembled as she whispered, "Forgive me, my daughter. I'm doing this for your sister's sake, for the sake of our family's honor. I have no other choice." She took a small pair of scissors, their blades gleaming in the moonlight, and gently cut a few strands of Nimi's hair, her movements as precise as a surgeon's. Nimi stirred slightly, but didn't wake up, her slumber undisturbed by the dark magic that was about to engulf her life. Mamai wrapped the hair in a small cloth, her hands shaking uncontrollably, and hid it under her wrapper, close to her heart, a symbol of her betrayal and the sacrifice she was about to make. At dawn, before the sun had even begun to paint the sky, she left the house quietly, her face a mask of guilt and fear, and walked deep into the forest, following the same treacherous path she had taken the day before. The air was thick and cold, clinging to her skin like a shroud. She walked for hours, her legs aching, her resolve wavering with each step, until she found a tall tree, its branches twisted and gnarled like the limbs of an ancient beast, standing alone in a clearing bathed in an ethereal light. She placed the hair inside the clay pot, its weight heavy in her hands, and hung it high on the tree, out of reach, its presence a constant reminder of her dark deed. She whispered, her voice trembling in the stillness of the forest. Let his love for Steamy die. Let his eyes see only Ada. Spirits of the forest, hear me, and grant me my wish. A cold wind suddenly blew, rustling through the trees and sending shivers down her spine. The trees shook violently, their branches swaying as if possessed by unseen forces. She felt something move behind her, a presence lurking in the shadows. But when she turned, she saw nothing, only the darkness and the endless expanse of the forest. Fear gripped her heart, its icy fingers squeezing the life out of her. She turned and ran home, her feet pounding against the earth, without looking back, desperate to escape the consequences of her actions. That night, for the first time in weeks, she slept soundly, her mind at peace, her conscience lulled into a false sense of security. She believed everything was over, that she had averted the impending shame and secured her family's future. But she was wrong. The spirits had been awakened, and the price for tampering with love would soon be paid. 1 week had passed since Steamy's mother had secretly gone to the native doctor to perform the charm in the forest. A week of uneasy calm before the storm. Everything seemed normal in the house, a fragile illusion masking the dark forces that were at play. Steamy was still sad about Ego's perceived rejection, but she was trying to move on, to accept her fate and find some semblance of peace. Then, one morning, something strange happened, something so terrifying that it would shatter her world and plunge her into despair. Steamy woke up feeling weak and cold, her body trembling uncontrollably. The morning sun was rising slowly, casting long shadows across the room, but she felt no warmth, only a chilling premonition of something terrible to come. She stretched her arms as usual, but then she froze, her eyes widening in disbelief. Her hands looked dry and pale, like she had been sick for months, drained of all life and vitality. She gasped, her breath catching in her throat, and quickly looked at her other hand. The same thing. Her heart started to beat very fast, a frantic rhythm of fear and confusion. She jumped out of bed and ran behind the hut, where a small old mirror hung on the wall, its surface cracked and distorted with age. When she looked into it, what she saw made her scream, a primal cry of anguish that echoed through the village. Her once beautiful face, the face that had launched 1,000 dreams, was gone, replaced by a grotesque caricature of its former self. Her smooth, radiant skin had turned rough and leathery, like the bark of an ancient tree. Her cheeks were thin and sunken, her bones jutting out beneath her sallow skin. Her lips were dry and cracked, and her eyes, once sparkling with life and laughter, looked dull and lifeless, like the eyes of a corpse. She screamed again, a desperate plea for help, and fell to her knees, her body racked with sobs. Her loud cry, a sound of pure, unadulterated terror, brought her mother and sister Ada running out of the hut, their faces etched with concern. When they saw her, they froze in shock, their eyes wide with disbelief and horror. "Steamy, what happened to you?" her mother shouted, her voice trembling with fear, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for the cause of this inexplicable transformation. Steamy was shaking uncontrollably as tears streamed down her face, leaving streaks of dirt on her ravaged skin. "Mama, I don't know," she sobbed, her voice barely a whisper. "I just woke up like this." Ada covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes filled with a mixture of pity and disbelief. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. The most beautiful girl in the village, the envy of all, now looked like a shadow of herself, a ghost haunting her own life. Mamai was so shocked that she couldn't close her mouth, her mind reeling from the implications of this sudden and devastating change. Without saying another word, she grabbed her wrapper and ran out of the compound in tears, her heart pounding with a mixture of guilt and fear, heading straight to Baba Odumu's shrine, seeking answers to the horrifying mystery that had befallen her daughter. When she reached Baba Odumu's hut, she was breathing heavily, her lungs burning with each ragged breath. "Baba! Baba Odumu!" she called out, her voice hoarse with desperation, shaking his door with frantic intensity. The old man slowly came out, his face impassive, his staff in hand, his eyes piercing through her with an unsettling intensity. "Who disturbs the spirits this early morning?" he asked calmly, his voice devoid of emotion. Mamai fell to her knees, her head bowed in supplication. "Baba, my daughter, something terrible has happened. She woke up this morning looking pale, weak, and very skinny. Her beauty is gone. Baba, what have you done to my child? What kind of magic have you unleashed?" Baba Odumu nodded slowly, his eyes filled with an ancient knowledge. "Ah, that is the repercussion, the price that must be paid," he said, his voice a low, ominous rumble. Mamai looked confused, her brow furrowed with incomprehension. "Repercussion? What do you mean, Baba? What price?" he said in his deep, resonant voice. "Whenever someone tampers with the spirit of love, whenever someone tries to manipulate the threads of destiny, there are always consequences. You ask the gods to turn the man's heart away from your younger daughter, to redirect his affections towards another. The gods have decided to exact their own price, to claim what you sought to deny." Mamai gasped, her face turning ashen. "But Baba, you never told me that Nimi would look like this. You never warned me that she would suffer such a terrible fate. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me do this?" Baba Odumu laughed lightly, a dry, humorless sound that sent shivers down her spine. "Woman, I am not the gods. I am merely a conduit, a vessel through which their will is expressed. I only speak what they reveal, and they reveal only what they deem necessary. The gods choose the punishment, not me. I am but a humble servant." Tears filled Mamai's eyes, her heart breaking with remorse and despair. "Please, Baba, help me," she begged, her voice choked with sobs. "What can I do to make her return to normal? What sacrifice can I offer to appease the spirits?" The old man's face became serious, his eyes filled with a chilling warning. "Do nothing," he said, his voice firm and unwavering. "You must never speak of this to anyone, not even your daughters. The secret must remain buried, locked away in your heart. And you must never go near that pot again. You must never try to touch it or even see it. If you do, something worse will happen, something far more terrible than you can possibly imagine." Mamai bowed her head and wept, her body shaking with uncontrollable sobs. Then she stood and walked quietly out of the shrine, her heart heavy with regret and fear, the weight of her actions crushing her spirit. Back at home, Nimi sat behind the hut, shrouded in shadows, crying silently, her tears watering the parched earth. She didn't want anyone to see her face, to witness the devastation that had befallen her. She hid whenever she heard people passing by, afraid of their stares, their whispers, their pity. Days turned into weeks, each one a torment. Nimi stopped going to the market, her presence no longer gracing the bustling square. She hardly ate or talked, her once vibrant spirit extinguished, leaving behind only a hollow shell. One evening, while she was still crying, her sobs muffled by her hands, someone called her name softly from outside. It was Ego. When Nimi heard his voice, a flicker of hope ignited within her, quickly followed by a wave of shame and despair. She quickly wiped her tears, trying to compose herself, and hid behind the door, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't want him to see her like that, to witness her ruined beauty, her shattered dreams. "Nimi, are you there?" Ego called again, his voice filled with a gentle concern that both comforted and terrified her. Her heart was beating fast, a frantic rhythm of hope and fear. She gathered her courage, took a deep breath, and slowly stepped out from behind the door, her face averted, her body trembling. When Ego saw her, his mouth fell open in shock, his eyes widening in disbelief. "Nimi, what happened to you?" he stammered, his voice barely audible. Nimi burst into tears, her carefully constructed facade crumbling around her. "I don't know, Ego," she sobbed, her voice choked with emotion. "I just woke up one morning like this. I don't understand. What's wrong with me?" Ego's face changed, his expression shifting from shock to something colder, something distant. He looked away from her, unable to meet her gaze, and said coldly, "Nimi, I'm sorry. I didn't come here for you. I came to see Ada." Nimi froze, her blood turning to ice in her veins. What did you say?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. He turned back to her, his eyes devoid of emotion, and said, "Your mother and I have arranged everything. I'm marrying Ada." Nimi's heart broke into pieces, the pain searing through her like a white-hot flame. She stood there trembling, unable to breathe, her world collapsing around her. He turned and walked away, leaving her crying on the floor, her dreams shattered, her hopes extinguished. Days later, the whole village was talking about it, their voices filled with gossip and speculation. Ego, the rich trader, the man who had once been so enamored with Nimi's beauty, was marrying Ada, the plain and unremarkable sister. The news spread everywhere, carried on the wind like a cruel joke. Women were gossiping behind their hands, their eyes filled with a mixture of pity and schadenfreude. Men were laughing, their voices laced with mockery. Everyone wondered what had happened to Nimi's beauty, what curse had befallen the jewel of the village. The wedding was fixed for the following week, a date that loomed over Nimi like a death sentence. The preparations began, the sounds of celebration a constant reminder of her loss. A day to the wedding, the pain became unbearable, a constant ache that threatened to consume her. Nimi could no longer take it. She cried all night, thinking about everything she had lost. Her beauty, her love, her future, and her mother's betrayal. Early the next morning, before the sun had even begun to paint the sky, she quietly left the house, her movements as silent as a ghost, without telling anyone where she was going. She walked alone into the forest, her bare feet touching the cold, damp ground, her heart filled with a desperate longing for escape. She said to herself, her voice barely a whisper, "I would rather be eaten by wild animals, to be consumed by the darkness of the forest, than to live with this pain, this constant reminder of what I have lost." Nimi walked for hours, deeper and deeper into the forest, her tears,